The vast emptiness of space stretched endlessly, cold and unforgiving. Among the dying stars, a lonely signal echoed through the void, carrying a desperate message. It was a call for help. A small spaceship, Nova 7, drifted near the edge of the Sol system, its crew unaware that they were about to make a decision that would change the fate of two species. A signal from the dark. Commander Ethan Carter stood at the command deck, eyes fixed on the blinking light on the screen. His second-in-command, Dr. Sarah Hayes, frowned as she analyzed the data. "It's old," she muttered, "but still active." "Where's it coming from?" Ethan asked. Sarah tapped a few keys, and a holographic map flickered to life. The dying planet, located far beyond Union-controlled space, glowed red on the screen. VX-17, she said. A dead world. No recorded colonies. No Union presence. Ethan's jaw tightened. If the Galactic Union had abandoned it, there was a reason. A desperate choice. A voice crackled through the comms. It was Lieutenant Marcus Lee, the ship's tactical officer. "Commander, we have orders. We're not supposed to respond to signals outside Union-controlled space." Ethan knew that. The Union had strict rules. Ignore distress signals unless ordered otherwise. But something about this signal felt different. It wasn't just a standard call for assistance. There was something hidden beneath the static, a repeating phrase in an alien language. A warning. A plea. Sarah ran another scan. Her face paled. "Ethan, this isn't a human signal. It's coming from an alien species." The crew fell silent. Humanity had made contact with aliens before, but not like this. A race left to die. Ethan exhaled sharply. "Patch it through." The ship's speakers crackled. The message was distorted, the alien words unfamiliar, but the desperation in the voice was clear as day. Then the translator caught a phrase. "Help. Last survivors. They will come back. Please, don't let us die." Sarah whispered, "My God, they're still alive." Marcus hesitated. "Commander, if we go there, we could be walking into a trap." Ethan knew the risks, but he also knew something else. If humanity turned away now, no one else would help them. His decision was made. Set course for VX-17. The dead world. As Nova 7 entered the system, the planet came into view. VX-17 was a graveyard. Its once great cities were reduced to rubble. Fires still burned in the ruins. The sky was black with smoke. Sarah checked the scanners. Life signs detected, but very few. Ethan's grip tightened. They were too late for most of them. The last survivors. The ship's comms crackled again. This time, a new voice. Weak, strained, desperate. "Human vessel, you hear us. Please, they will return soon." Sarah's hands trembled. "They're scared, Ethan. Asterisk, 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 something's still out there." Ethan took a deep breath. Prepare to land. As Nova 7 descended, a shadow passed across the sky. Ethan looked up and froze. In the distance, a massive dark warship loomed in orbit, its shape barely visible against the blackness of space. And then, the scanner screamed with a new alert. They weren't alone. The Nova 7 hovered above the ruins of VX-17, its engines humming softly in the eerie silence. Below, the last remnants of an abandoned alien civilization struggled to survive. But the crew of Nova 7 had a bigger problem. A dark warship loomed above the planet, watching, waiting. Commander Ethan Carter knew they had little time. First contact. The distress signal had led them here, and now the survivors were calling again. The voice came through the comms, weak but urgent. "Human vessel, please, you must hurry. They are coming back." Ethan turned to his crew. "We land now." Lieutenant Marcus Lee hesitated. "Commander, that warship hasn't moved, but it's there for a reason. If we go down, we might not get back up." Ethan knew the risk, but if they left now, They were leaving these aliens to die. "We go," he said. "Suit up." The ruins of VX-17. The landing was rough. The surface of VX-17 was a wasteland. The air was thick with smoke, the ground covered in rubble. Strange, broken buildings rose like skeletons, their glass and steel shattered from whatever catastrophe had struck. Sarah scanned the area. Life signs, 800 meters ahead. Ethan nodded. "Move out." The crew advanced cautiously. Every step felt like walking through a graveyard. Then, out of the shadows, they appeared, the last of the Vayari. They were tall, thin, and covered in deep scars. Their skin was a dull gray, their eyes large and filled with exhaustion. The leader, Kaler, stepped forward, his voice trembling. "You came." Sarah spoke gently. "We received your signal. We're here to help." Kaler's eyes filled with something close to hope. But that hope shattered as a terrible sound ripped through the sky. A deep, rumbling roar. Sarah turned to Ethan, fear in her voice. "That's not thunder. The enemy arrives." The warship above had moved. Bright red beams of light shot down from the sky, scanning the ruins. Kaler's breathing quickened. "They found us." Ethan's heart pounded. "Who?" Kaler's eyes darkened. "The ones who destroyed my world." Then, from the wreckage, figures emerged. Dark, armored beings, their weapons glowing with energy. Ethan raised his rifle. They weren't rescuing survivors anymore. They were fighting for their lives. The ruins of VX-17 trembled as the enemy forces closed in. Commander Ethan Carter and his crew stood shoulder to shoulder with the last surviving Vayari, their weapons raised. Above them, the massive warship blocked out the stars, its scanners sweeping across the wasteland like a predator searching for prey. Kaler, the Vayari leader, gritted his teeth. "They've come to finish what they started." Sarah's fingers tightened around her rifle. "Who are they?" Kaler's voice was filled with hatred. "The Dravari," a name that sent a chill through the air. The enemy revealed. From the shadows of the ruins, the Dravari soldiers stepped forward. Black armor, blood-red visors, weapons humming with deadly energy. They moved with perfect precision, their boots crunching against the broken remains of a once great city. Ethan counted them. Too many. Marcus whispered, "We're outnumbered." Ethan already knew, but running wasn't an option. The Vayari had already lost everything. Ethan refused to let them die here. Not while humanity still stood. The first shot. The lead Dravari warrior raised his weapon. Kaler whispered, "Get down." A split second later, a blast of red energy tore through the air. Ethan barely dodged, diving behind a broken wall. The ground exploded where he had stood just moments ago. "Open fire," he roared. The ruins erupted with gunfire. Sarah, Marcus, and the rest of the Nova 7 crew fired back, their bullets sparking against the Dravari armor. The Vayari, though weak, fought with desperation, throwing makeshift explosives and using whatever weapons they had left. The battle was chaos. Running out of time, Sarah ducked behind cover, panting. "We can't hold them off forever." Ethan reloaded his weapon. "We don't have to. We just need a way out." Kaler's eyes flickered with realization. There is a hidden passage beneath the ruins. An old tunnel system. Ethan didn't hesitate. "Show us." Kaler turned to his people. "Fall back. Get to the tunnels." The Vayari moved fast, slipping through the shattered buildings. But the Dravari weren't letting them escape. One of the Vayari, a young female, stumbled. The Dravari raised his weapon to execute her. Ethan's rifle snapped up. One shot. Direct hit. The Dravari collapsed. Kaler stared at Ethan in shock. You saved her." Ethan didn't even look back. "Move." The last stand. For now. The entrance to the tunnels was just ahead. But so were the Dravari. They moved in, their weapons glowing, preparing for a final strike. Ethan's mind raced. If they didn't do something now, no one would make it out alive. Sarah suddenly grabbed his arm. I have an idea. She pointed to a half-collapsed tower nearby. If they could bring it down. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Marcus, how many grenades do we have? Marcus grinned. Enough. The escape grenades flew. Explosions ripped through the ruins. The old tower groaned, its broken structure giving way. Then, with a mighty crash, it collapsed. A storm of dust and debris engulfed the battlefield, cutting off the Draveri's advance. Ethan didn't wait. Go. Into the tunnels. The survivors rushed into the darkness, leaving behind the burning ruins of VX-17. As they ran, Kaler glanced at Ethan. Why are you helping us? Ethan's answer was simple. Because no one else will. Above them, the Draveri warship loomed, its engines roaring to life. This fight wasn't over. They had escaped, for now. But the Draveri would not stop hunting them. The tunnels beneath VX-17 were dark, damp, and suffocating. The air was heavy with dust, and the walls trembled as distant explosions shook the ground above. Commander Ethan Carter led the way, his flashlight cutting through the blackness. Behind him, the last surviving Vayari followed in silence, their eyes filled with exhaustion and fear. Somewhere above, the Draveri warship was still there, waiting. And they were hunting. No safe place. Lieutenant Marcus Lee checked the scanner. The Draveri are scanning the ruins. If they detect movement, they'll send ground troops. Kaler, the Vayari leader, clenched his fists. They won't stop. They never do. Ethan turned to him. You said these tunnels lead somewhere. Kaler nodded. An old spaceport. If it still has power, we might escape. Ethan exchanged a glance with Dr. Sarah Hayes. Might escape. That wasn't good enough. But they had no choice. Then we move. The Draveri's shadow. The group pushed forward, feet splashing through shallow water, breathing in the stale air. Then, a deep metallic hum echoed through the tunnels. Sarah froze. They're here. Ethan motioned for silence. The hum grew louder, and then a red light flashed ahead. Draveri drones. Fast, precise, deadly. One wrong move, and they'd all be dead. Marcus whispered, we need to take them out before they alert the main force. Ethan took a breath. He had an idea. The ambush. The group pressed against the walls, hiding in the shadows. The drones glided closer, scanning every inch of the tunnel. Ethan counted. 3. On my mark, he whispered. 3, 2, 1. A single silenced shot from Marcus's rifle took out the first drone. Sarah threw a small EMP device at the second. It fizzled and crashed. Kaler, weak but determined, lunged forward and stabbed the third with a jagged metal rod. The drone shattered, its red lights flickering out. Ethan exhaled. Move. Now. The spaceport. After what felt like hours, the tunnels opened up into a vast, underground hangar. Sarah's eyes widened. It's still intact. Rusting ships sat abandoned, covered in dust and vines. A control panel blinked weakly, barely alive. Kaler ran to it. If we can power up one of these ships, we can get off this planet. Marcus muttered, big if. Sarah checked the fuel reserves. One ship has enough power. Barely. Ethan didn't like the odds, but they had no choice. Do it. Now. The Draveri arrive. As Sarah worked, a sudden boom shook the walls. The Draveri had found them. Heavy footsteps. Metal scraping against stone. Voices barking in an alien language. Kaler's breathing quickened. They're here. Ethan turned to his crew. No more running. This was it. We hold them off. We buy time. And we get these people out of here. Marcus checked his ammo. One way or another. The Vayari survivors picked up whatever weapons they could. The tunnel entrance exploded inward. And the final battle for VX-17 began. The walls trembled as the tunnel entrance exploded inward. The Draveri had arrived. Commander Ethan Carter barely had time to react before a wave of armored soldiers poured into the underground spaceport, their weapons glowing red in the dim light. "Take cover," he shouted. The survivors of the Vayari, weak, hungry, but determined, scrambled behind crates and old ship parts. Ethan's crew took defensive positions near the half-powered escape ship. There was no way out unless they could hold off the Draveri long enough for Sarah to get the ship running. It was do or die. The first strike. The first Draveri soldiers opened fire. Bright red plasma blasts streaked through the air, melting metal and stone on impact. Marcus fired first, his rifle snapping out 3 precise shots. 2 Draveri dropped instantly. Kaler and his people, though weak, fought back, using scavenged weapons and sheer desperation. But the Draveri weren't just soldiers. They were hunters. They moved fast, their black armor almost blending into the shadows. And they kept coming. Ethan ducked behind cover, his heart pounding. They needed more time. "Sarah," he yelled. "How much longer?" Sarah's voice was strained with panic as she worked furiously at the control panel. "A few minutes. Just keep them off me." Easier said than done. The Draveri commander. A deep, growling voice echoed through the spaceport. "Humans." Ethan froze. From the smoke and fire, a massive figure stepped forward. A Draveri commander. His armor was scared, his helmet adorned with jagged markings, trophies of past kills. In one hand, he held a massive energy blade, crackling with power. In the other, he raised a communication device. "Surrender. You cannot win." Ethan's grip tightened around his rifle. "Not happening." The commander tilted his head, as if amused. "Then you will die here." With blinding speed, he charged forward. Desperate measures. Ethan barely had time to react before the Draveri commander swung his blade. He dodged, the weapon slicing clean through a steel crate like it was paper. Marcus fired at point-blank range, but the commander deflected the shots with inhuman reflexes. Ethan rolled to the side, grabbed a fallen Draveri's shock grenade and hurled it. The grenade detonated, sending the commander staggering back for the first time. Ethan took the chance. He grabbed his rifle and emptied an entire clip into the commander's chest. The armor cracked. The commander let out a furious roar, stumbling, but he wasn't dead. Ethan knew they couldn't kill him in a straight fight. They needed to get out. Now. Escape, at a cost. Sarah's voice suddenly crackled through the comms. "The ship is ready." Ethan didn't hesitate. "Everyone, fall back to the ship. Now." The survivors broke into a sprint, covering each other as they ran toward the loading ramp. Kaler stayed until the last moment, helping his people aboard. Marcus and Sarah dragged Ethan up the ramp just as the Draveri stormed forward again. The commander, still injured, raised his blade for one last strike. But the ship's thrusters ignited, and a wave of fire blasted the Draveri back. Ethan barely managed to pull the hatch closed as the ship lifted off, rocketing out of the underground hangar. Through the viewport, he saw the Draveri warship above, turning to pursue them. They weren't safe yet. The chase begins. Ethan stumbled into the cockpit, breathing hard. Sarah was already in the pilot's seat, hands flying across the controls. "Hang on," she shouted. The ship shot into the sky, breaking through the ruins of VX-17. Behind them, the Draveri warship roared to life, pursuing at full speed. Kaler gripped the seat, eyes wide with fear. "They won't stop." Ethan nodded grimly. "Then we make them." The final battle was just beginning. The stolen Vayari ship shot through the sky, breaking free from the ruined planet below. Ethan Carter gripped the cockpit chair as the ship shuddered, alarms blaring. Behind them, the Draveri warship loomed, its massive cannons glowing as it prepared to fire. Sarah's hands flew across the controls. "They're locking onto us." Marcus, checking the weapon systems, cursed. "We've got no shields and barely any firepower. We can't outrun them." Kaler, watching the enemy ship in horror, whispered, "They will never stop hunting us." Ethan clenched his jaw. "Then we need to stop them first." But how do you fight a warship with a dying escape craft? A desperate plan. The Draveri opened fire, searing red plasma bolts ripping through the vacuum of space. Sarah jerked the controls, barely dodging as one blast grazed the wing, sending a violent jolt through the cabin. "We won't survive another hit like that," she shouted. Ethan's mind raced. They couldn't run. They couldn't fight head-on, which left one option. A crazy, reckless option. He turned to Marcus. "Is there any fuel left in the auxiliary tanks?" Marcus checked, confused. "A little. Why?" Ethan's eyes locked onto the Draveri warship, calculating the distance. "Because we're gonna turn it into a bomb." Turning the tables. Marcus's face paled. "You want to dump the fuel and ignite it?" Ethan nodded. "If we time it right, the explosion will disable their engines." Sarah's grip tightened on the controls. "And if we time it wrong?" Ethan smirked. "Then we go out in the biggest fireball this galaxy's ever seen." Marcus shook his head, muttering, "You're insane." But he was already moving. He rushed to the engine bay, preparing the manual override to vent the remaining fuel. Ethan turned to Kaler. "Get your people strapped in. This is gonna be rough." The Vayari leader nodded, his face grim. "May the stars favor us." "Let's hope they do," Ethan muttered. "The trap is set." Sarah angled the ship, forcing the Draveri warship to close in behind them. The enemy didn't suspect a thing. Marcus's voice crackled over the comms. "Fuel dump ready. Just say the word." Ethan watched the targeting system, waiting. The Draveri ship moved into range. "Now," Ethan shouted. Marcus hit the release. A cloud of fuel vented into space, spreading between them and the enemy ship. For a second, nothing happened. Then Sarah fired a single shot into the cloud. The result was instantaneous. A massive explosion ripped through space, engulfing the Draveri ship's engines in fire. The warship lurched, alarms flashing across its hull. They were crippled. Ethan let out a breath. It worked. But it wasn't over. The last shot. The Draveri warship was still active, its weapons powering up for one final attack. Sarah's eyes widened. "They're still coming." Ethan saw it too. The explosion slowed them down, but didn't stop them. Marcus yelled, "We've got one missile left, but it won't break their shields." Kaler suddenly stepped forward. His eyes burned with determination. "Aim for the bridge." Ethan hesitated. Kaler's voice was firm. "The shields are strong, but the glass of their bridge is still a weak point. One good shot might be enough." Ethan and Marcus exchanged a look. It was a long shot, but it was their only shot. Fire. Marcus launched the missile. The tiny projectile streaked across the battlefield. The Draveri tried to evade, but their crippled engines couldn't move fast enough. The missile slammed into the bridge. For a moment, nothing. Then, the glass shattered. Victory and uncertainty. The Draveri ship went silent. No more weapons. No more pursuit. Ethan let out a shaky breath. It's over. Kaler stared at the drifting warship. His people had been hunted for years. Now, their greatest enemy was nothing but wreckage. For the first time in a long time, they were free. Sarah guided the ship toward the nearest star system, her voice quiet. "So, what now?" Ethan leaned back, watching the stars ahead. "Now, we find them a home." But somewhere, deep in the galaxy, the Draveri were watching. And they would not forget. The stars stretched endlessly before them. For the first time in years, Kaler and his people were not running for their lives. Ethan Carter sat in the cockpit, watching the distant wreckage of the Draveri warship slowly drift into darkness. Their greatest enemy had been dealt a serious blow. But the war wasn't over. Not yet. Sarah exhaled, hands steady on the controls. We need a safe place to land. Marcus checked the ship's system, frowning at the flickering status lights. We don't have much choice. Fuel's low. Hull's damaged. We need repairs. Fast. Kaler looked at Ethan, his voice cautious. Do you have a place in mind? Ethan glanced at the map. There was only one option. Earth. The last gamble. Kaler hesitated. His people had heard stories of human worlds, some filled with hope, others with fear. Your leaders, he asked, will they accept us? Ethan didn't have an easy answer. Humanity had spent centuries preparing for war with alien threats. Would they welcome the Vayari as refugees, or see them as another danger? Marcus sighed. Well, it's either Earth, or waiting to be found by more Dravari. That settled it. Set a course, Ethan said. We'll face whatever comes next, together. First contact. Again. As their battered ship approached Earth's atmosphere, the alarm screeched to life. Sarah checked the sensors, her face tight with worry. We've been detected. Ethan saw it too. A fleet of human warships was moving to intercept them. Within minutes, a stern voice crackled through the comms. Unidentified vessel, you are entering Earth-controlled space. State your identity and purpose. Ethan took a deep breath and pressed the comm button. This is Commander Ethan Carter, Terran Defense Force. We're carrying refugees, survivors of a Dravari attack. Request immediate landing and aid. There was silence. Then, another voice came through. Deeper, colder, more cautious. Stand by. The seconds stretched into eternity. Kaler's people clutched each other, uncertain what fate awaited them. Then, at last, the response came. Permission granted. Landing coordinates transmitted. Welcome home, Commander Carter. Sarah let out a relieved breath. But Ethan knew this was only the beginning. Earth had welcomed them, for now. But what would happen when the full truth about the Dravari War reached human leaders? Would Earth stand as an ally? Or would humanity decide that one alien threat was already too many? Kaler placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. We are in your debt. Ethan shook his head. We're not done yet. Somewhere, deep in space, the Dravari were regrouping. And next time, they wouldn't come with just one warship. They would come for war.